Meet Tulku Lobsang, a revolutionary Tibetan teacher rooted in the ancient Tibetan traditions and bridging the modern world. Hi, I'm Farah of Tibetan Healing Movement. Thank you for watching. In this video, I am going to be talking about my teacher, Tulku Lobsang Rinpoche. So I originally met Tulku in India in early February 2002. So at the time of recording this video, that's over 18 years that Tulku Lobsang has been my teacher. And I also have been supporting him and his organization, which he's the founder and director of, which is called Nangten Menlang. It's a Tibetan Buddhist medical organization based in Austria. So I just want to pay my deep, deep respects to Tulku, my dear teacher, and everything that I share with you in these videos, the practices that I teach with Tibetan Healing Movement, anything I say, really, I learned it all from him over these 18 plus years of being his student. So I just hope to be, as clear of a channel for the teachings and to share them with you in how I receive them. So please know that I owe it all to him, and deep, deep respect. So I just wanted to give a little background on who Tulku Lobsang is, because particularly in regards to Tummo, he's really a master of the Tummo Inner Fire practice. So he's the one that you go to if you want to learn Tummo. I'm talking a little bit because I teach in the direction of Tummo, but the real Tummo, you want to go to a master. So Tulku Lobsang's history. He was born in Tibet in 1976, and at a very young age entered the monasteries. And actually the first monastery that he went to and received his first formal education was a Bon monastery, Bon. So that is the indigenous shamanic tradition of Tibet. It was already there before Buddhism was introduced. But today it's like Buddhism and Bon, they have so much overlap and they've borrowed a lot from each other. So Bon is like, the Dalai Lama himself said, another of the great schools of Tibetan Buddhism. So Tulku is both a Bon teacher as well as the traditional Tibetan Buddhism. So this word Tulku is actually a title. So the meaning of Tulku is a recognized reincarnated Lama. So when Tulku was age 13, he was recognized as the 8th incarnation of the Nyense Lama. And this is done through oracles, and different rituals were done, and then his name was said. And in that moment, when he was enthroned as a Tulku at that young age of 13, he kind of moved to a particular position. It's a position of responsibility in of the monasteries, but also receiving really intensive education in all the traditional Tibetan philosophies, as well as he demonstrated innate healing capacities, and therefore was encouraged and went on to become a doctor of Tibetan medicine and astrology. And those two go together. The medicine and astrology is like method and wisdom. So Tulku Lobsang Rinpoche is a doctor of Tibetan medicine, and received all traditional educations as it was for centuries upon centuries in Tibet. And additionally, he has a great interest in the movement practices, of which there are many in Tibetan Buddhism. And sought out masters to receive empowerments of all the different lineages. So he was enthroned as a um, Gelug Tulku. So the of the four main schools of Tibetan Buddhism. So he's Gelugpa by tradition. However, his interest in these different movement practices, often called Trulkor, led him to receive teachings and empowerments from all lineages. And this is the Tantrayana teaching, the path in which we use the body as a vehicle to reach the same end of all Buddhist methods have the same goal, which is the clear light state of mind, coming closer to our Buddha nature. But Tantrayana or Vajrayana goes through the body, because changes in the body also create the changes in the mind as well. So these practices include, Trulkor, we have Lujong, Zalong, Tummo, and he a master of these, and to be able to bring these different traditions together enables him to really distill down to the essence. So in this regard, he could be considered a rime teacher, and that's a term to indicate non-sectarian. So, the different schools have their strengths, but we don't want to create divisions and this secularism necessarily. The differences are good, but we also need to recognize what brings everything together. And so, teaching the essence of everything is this rime. So he first was enthroned at the Soa monastery, and then went to deepen his teachings at the Umchok monastery, and then eventually went in later teenage years to India. So as you know, Tibet is still in the process of undergoing major cultural genocide, and so therefore there's a lot of danger, physical harm and danger, but also limitations in being able to teach and learn. So in India, then one was able to be more free in that regard. There's a large government in exile there. That's where the Dalai Lama is, and that's where I met Tulku Lobsang years later in Manali, India. So moving forward from there, he began to see more patients in the realm of Tibetan medicine, and little by little, Westerners started coming to him, either for astrology readings or to do pulse diagnosis. So in this kind of organic way, he started teaching to Westerners. And then a Swiss gentleman invited him to Switzerland, and that was his first trip to Europe. Maybe, I think it was in 2000. And in 2002, I met Tulkula in Manali, where he was offering his first intensive retreat. It was a 3-week retreat on Tsalung, and that's where I met him. And from there, things just grew and developed and blossomed for Tulkula and his teachings and his students. And he began traveling, being invited, and tours were coordinated more and more for him in Europe. And then I also stepped up to help bring him to North America and organize tours for him in the US and Canada. And over the years, his organization, which he founded, which is again called Nangtin Menlang Buddhist Medical Organization, it just made more sense, rather than staying in India and then having Europeans also travel to see him there. He eventually opened an office, some headquarters in Vienna, where it still remains to this day. So what Nangtin Menlang does is teaches, it really helps preserve the traditional Tibetan Buddhist healing knowledge. So this interwovenness of the medicine and the Buddhism, it's the body and the mind. they both suffer from imbalance, disease, and there's medicines that can be applied. And the Buddhist medicines are meditations and particular purification exercises, mantras, developing compassion, kindness, devotion, these things. And this is just as much medicine as herbal remedies and behavior and food modifications that we receive from Tibetan medicine. So they really go hand in hand. And Nangten Menlang through Tulku Lobsang teaches many of these things, and particularly with a focus on the movement practices. So Tulku Lobsang, created these beautiful systems. He's so amazing at doing this, where he's collating a system, pulling from, so he learned many of these movement practices, and then with Lu Zhong creating a really clear system of groups of movements that are very accessible and applicable for Westerners. This group focuses on the spine, this group on the joints and aligning the musculoskeletal system, this one for the organs. So that's Lujong, and he's done the same with Tsalung. We teach in the Kala Chakra tradition of Tsalung, and there's a very clear system. These preparation preliminary practices, these prayers, these seated movements, these standing movements, this meditation, boom, really beautiful, accessible system. And then there's Tummo. And this is really Tulku Lobsang's specialty. He is an amazing teacher and practitioner of Tummo. And to teach Tummo is such an art. There is such deep meaning and context behind it, which is why I get a little worked up when I hear people refer to the Tibetans drying sheets in the cold. Like that has anything to do with the purpose of Tummo. It doesn't. So it's really a deep, beautiful, rich path, and Tulku Lobsang shares this so skillfully, and also can kind of expand and contract the Tummo practice. I've organized many Tummo retreats for him over the years, and they vary in length. I mean, I've attended 2 weeks retreats, 2 weeks, 10 days, 1 week, a long weekend, and a weekend. I have attended several just weekend long Tummo retreats, and then you think, wow, it's such a deep, big subject, and there's so many preparations involved, and preparing the body and the breath and the mind and the visualization. But Tulku Lobsang is just a really skillful teacher at distilling things to its essence and giving a complete practice that covers those important bases in whatever length of time. So today, Nangten Menlang continues to offer, so Tulku Lobsang's traveling and touring throughout Europe most of the year long, but now we also have these certification programs, which is brilliant. It's scalable, so it's spreading the practices further so that more people can benefit, rather than just relying only on the one teacher, Tulku Lobsang. He's now chosen educators. So these are his kind of more long-time students, or students that he knows, that he gives his blessing to train teachers. So I'm an educator in both Lujong and Tokcherd, which is the sword practice, which I didn't even mention, and we'll have to save that for another video. That's really Tulku Lobsang's thing, as well as the Tokcherd wisdom sword practice. But so the educators train teachers, and then these teachers can go and offer, regular classes to their communities. And in this way, there's this radiating outward of these practices. And it's such a brilliant method. And I just love how Tulku Lobsang, balances this remaining really always true to the essence of Buddhism, the real, true, deep meaning of Buddhism, And he was raised and educated traditionally. And he's able to be in the West and share that knowledge in a way that really speaks to the Western cultural mindset and also to the needs of Western people. You know, the stress and the burnout and perhaps, you know, the complete lack of education that we've received on training the mind. You know, we all know about exercising our body, but, you know, in schools we were never taught about how you train and exercise the mind. So being able to teach to Westerners and share these traditional Tibetan Buddhist practices is really an amazing art and skill. And this, and you know, to illustrate this, I can tell you about a meeting that Tulku Lobsang had in, I believe it was December of 2013, with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And he showed him all that he's doing. Look, I'm training teachers in these practices. I'm offering these certification programs. I made this DVD. I wrote this book in Tibetan about all the Tsalung movements, and His Holiness said, you know, beautiful, beautiful work, and how about we also bring that directly to the Tibetans? Because traditionally, some of these things, even though they're rooted in principles of Tibetan medicine and are for, you know, practical health purposes, there's this tradition of you know, certain things being kept secret or needing to do a lot of preliminary practices or empowerments. So, in coordination with the Central Tibetan Administration and the Health Department, a large tour was organized whereby Tulku Lobsang traveled throughout India, North and South India, visiting monasteries, nunneries, the Tibetan children's villages, the Tantric College, and more, and teaching, bringing these things directly, immediately to the Tibetan people. And that might not sound like a big deal because we receive these teachings all the time. I've gone to retreats for the last 18 years, and more things are online. But still, it's quite historic to apply this openness that we have in the West with sharing things, with the caveat being you need to share it skillfully, and you know, you don't just throw it away and just hope it lands. There's a way that you build the correct foundation, and there's always respect involved for sure, but there's a little bit more of an openness that then they applied to teaching in the Tibetan communities. So that's what I mean about being a little bit revolutionary. It's this recognition of, yes, we honor tradition, things are in place for a reason, there's rules for a reason, but benefit is the most important thing to consider. So if there's a situation where the tradition, the traditional rules are opposed to the highest benefit, then one goes with the benefit. And this is something that the historic Buddha himself did so amazingly, which is teaching in different ways depending on the character of the student. And that's why we have these different paths of Buddhism. For someone who's more, you know, likes following the rules and you know, vows and these things. And then there's another character who's really philosophical and wants to debate and discuss from 10 directions. And then there's the really like experiential, action oriented. And then this is the Tantrayana path, which is really about doing and feeling in the body. And then, of course, Buddhism developed in the different cultures in many different ways. So, yes, continuing that beautiful tradition, my teacher, Tulku Lobsang Rinpoche, is really bringing the Tibetan Buddhism in a very compassionate, skillful way and presenting it to the Western minds in a way that we can really have optimum benefit. And I'm honored to play a role in that. I'm honored to help him in his mission and sharing these teachings. And it's beautiful to see how people blossom and come closer to their calm, clear, energetic nature through the practices. So if you are curious about Tummo particularly, I'm going to direct you to Tulku Lobsang, or you can go to tulkulobsang.org to learn more about him and his offerings, and you can read his full biography there. And thank you for your interest and your time and attention, most valuable resources. I hope you found some value in this and that it helped spark your curiosity. And if you'd like to really get the true tradition, the real essence of Tibetan Buddhism and the Tantrayana path, then now you know where to go. All right, all the best to you.